Hi, and welcome back to Resilience Unravelled. And today I'm meeting Craig Polsfuss, who's got a really interesting name, really interesting story, and potentially all sorts of interesting tips and techniques to talk about. So, first of all, welcome, Craig. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I love doing these kinds of interviews and have these conversations that we don't know quite where they're going to go and what amazing insights might come out of them.
You've set the scene brilliantly. Where in the world are you, Craig?
I'm in the state of Minnesota.
All right.
I was born here, grew up here, and have gone to school elsewhere, but a lot of my schooling was here too.
So, have you been lived in Minnesota all your life? Is that the idea? A lot of
Yes,
Americans seem to stay very local, don't they?
yes. We get four seasons here, which I grew up with and I love. And there's a real nice kind of social climate here in Minnesota. So I grew up in a small rural town in Minnesota, and that was heaven to me. Even though I had all kinds of experiences, just like any kid, that weren't so pleasant. Overall, it was just great, and I noticed in me, um, I was the kind of kid that when in elementary school, when we were out in the playground and other boys would start to get ready to fight with each other, I'd go over and try to talk them out of it because it
Mm.
just didn't make sense to me. And then I talk that to them, and almost always I could talk them out of it because they're like, okay, you punch him and that hurts, and then you punch it, and what good is that going to do? And they kind of got through to them. I don't know why I did that, other than that's just what I felt like doing. So that carried me forward, fast forward to growing up and going to college here in Minnesota and studying psychology and sociology were my two main areas, although a close third was religion and philosophy. So you kind of get a sense of my interests there.
Mm.
And as I matured as a human being, I was aware of this thirst in me for, I guess you could describe it many ways, but the thirst was for to get the most out of life, and
Mm.
not out of desperation, but just out of joy of something in me was awake and aware that, hey, this is amazing, and I it's a gift to be unwrapped and enjoyed as much as possible. So, so I embraced. I was motivated by that, but I embraced what I was exposed to around me, which I won't go into detail with because I don't think your listeners might be that interested in that, but more where I ended up. So as I went, I had a really nice life, nice family, nice upbringing, great school. I was smart. I could get good grades.
Mm.
I was an athlete. I had good friends. I had a good girlfriend, that more than one, but then eventually one that I married, right? And we're married. It will be 53 years now,
Wow. Wow.
and in actually about a week. You know, so
Congrats.
um, uh, but as I'm going and I have this really nice life, I'm aware of this thirst in my inside of me. You could call it my heart or my soul or whatever, for something that I would kind of try to define, truth, God, enlightenment, whatever,
Mm.
self-actualization, whatever the term would be there. And it was getting stronger and stronger, and I was seeming to make headway, but I could never quite get there.
Mm.
And then through a number of experiences and insights, I had a moment of awakening when I was 28 years old, right about the time I got licensed as a psychologist, that I don't know how to accurately describe it in words, but one of the ways that fits a lot is, to me, my life, my mind, myself, I turned inside out. And that makes sense now with what we may end up talking about here, or what I mentioned in my book and my series of books, actually. And and I realized from about a whole bunch of stuff at that
Mm.
point, but that most of the world was in a psychological, and I didn't have this language at the time, but
Mm.
now I do, that most of the world was in a paradigm, a psychological paradigm of outside in. And it
Yeah.
made sense. The outside makes me experience what I do on the inside. I like the sunny day. I like when I had friends. I liked when I had money. That all makes me feel good. But when you step back and look at that, you realize it's not true,
Mm.
because some days are sunny and I'm not so happy. Some
Yeah.
days the traffic is really bad, but I don't mind.
Yeah.
So it's that we have the power and are using the power, whether we know it or not, to create our own personal reality, um, or and our experience of it. And that's a dramatic shift. It's a small shift in a way. It's just like, oh, it's not this, it's this.
Mm,
But it's huge in another way because uh, you see, you've essentially shifted from I'm a victim
mm,
of whatever life throws at me to no matter what I experience, and even if I frame it in my mind as life throwing it at me, I have the innate resilience, the innate power, the innate intelligence, creativity, whatever you want to call that, to find a way to not just get through that experience, but extract from that experience some kind of learning, some kind of value, some kind of empowerment in my life that then is valuable to me and likely to others.
mm,
So I just saw that, oh my gosh, it's as simple as really first and foremost knowing in this way, not just intellectually or through a description, but knowing experientially who are we really, and then being true to that. And life will back us up then. It was from the beginning, but it sure hasn't felt like that. And even now, I have moments where it doesn't look or feel that way, but I don't know how to say it. Some might call it grace, some might call it an innate part of the life force of who we are. We do get through, and
mm,
here we are still. And that, and there's a great, I point out the obvious. I think a lot of your listeners will relate to this. We can't unsee what we've seen. That's become a popular saying, and
mm,
it's true. We experience something that aligns with how we're designed by nature, and it grabs onto that and keeps it. Now we may forget it, and we may vary from it because it hasn't been established in us yet. But deep down, our system remembers it and keeps us going forward in that. So there's this innate desire, thirst to experience all that life has for us and then to extract the best of that. And the more we let it do its job versus I'm going to do it in my way and I interfere with it or I resist it, the better we feel and the better we do.
mm. It's
So
it's
that's
it's interesting you talk about this in this way because I think it was Robert Rankin that used to talk about this idea that we mostly stumble through our lives, and then we have these moments of shattering reality when we wake up and we notice what's going on around us, and those can be transformative events. Sometimes they're, it's like resilience. People often talk about this idea of hitting rock bottom and then they experience true reality. This idea that we're not living in our own head anymore. Because there's a problem with inside out and outside in. The challenge is how you balance the two things because you have to have both things working, don't you? And there's a lot of
yes,
people who spend
yes,
a lot of time sitting on the top of a mountain, omming and having all sorts of self-awareness, but then don't know how to eat because they haven't been aware of the outside world. How many businesses have failed because we sat there talking about our true purpose and sending intention in the atmosphere, but nothing happens because you've got to do some work. So there's this balance between esoteric and practical, I think, that's going on here. Would you say?
yes, definitely. And I think of it less as two things in opposition to each other and more as they're both happening simultaneously, and which one is foreground and which one is background. We were born from the inside, let's say, and then there's this experience that we can be that of like so from the inside is what you'd call, and this is where it could we could use spiritual language, but real but invisible and formless. Sometimes I'll use the example of our eyes and our visual field. We're all looking out, those of us who have eyes that work, and we're seeing whatever we're seeing. And I'm seeing you on the screen and what's in front of me here in my office and all that. And but how often do we stop and go and reflect on, well, what's looking through my eyes? What's allowing me to see through my eyes and experience that? And as we reflect on that, we're turning our consciousness within and getting a feel for what's behind our eyes. And if we're, even as your listeners are maybe doing that right now, if they start to do that, they'll start to notice they start to calm down and they start to get more present. because what's behind our eyes? Well, it must be us. And who we are can't not be in the moment. So we're coming more into the moment. And the experience of not being in the moment is just a mental creation. So we're disengaging. I like it a moment ago, you said being something about being in our heads or not. It's like realizing, oh, I have this head that I've been given that I'm experiencing life through, and I can learn to use it as a tool. But pretty soon we start to identify with it. And then we innocently get caught in that and think we have to make our head figure it all out when there's a kind of a truth in that. When you figure it all out, you realize, oh, there's an intelligence I have and I am that's before my head. Like my head got developed through my life and my schooling and my conditioning, have a certain identity, and whatever I embrace as my self-created identity, the way the mind works is I'll feel that. So if I feel like I'm a loser or life is always a struggle, if I think that, well, then I'm going to feel that. And it's so understandable, you know, because we've all go through this and I've been through it myself. If I feel something over and over again, I'll conclude, well, then it must be real. But when I stop and look and go, wait a minute, it's a real experience, but am I my experience? No, I'm that which is observing my experience.
Hmm.
But if I get absorbed in the movie, so to speak, I go to the
That's very
theater, watch
Jungian.
the movie. What, go ahead. What?
I said you're very Jungian in your psychological assessment, which is good. So am I. So, but
Yeah,
I think
okay.
it's, and I think that's right about the observer, isn't it? That idea of the observer, and it's what's interesting about this process is two different things, isn't there? Because one is well, the sum total of our beliefs and bias and such like, aren't we? Because and the prejudices that we have, and we have this confirmation bias that we tend to look at the world to find the things that we already agree with, and that's a challenge. Exactly as you're saying, if I think I'm a loser, I'll see all the impacts of where I am, and I'll screen out all those things where I'm not, and filter that response. And we see people this happening, particularly on social media, where you'll have people who become radicalized because they start with this idea that they see the world in a particular way, then the evidence of social media throws that on, and people lose that sense of objectivity. So there must be a point then when you sit in your own head and you've got the weight of evidence sitting out there. It's quite a skill to be able to build this independent observer that's not you, but who also is you at the same time. And of course, that's what we know therapists and coaches and counselors are for. They're for throwing that process back to you, aren't they? Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes. Although I was aware of the word you said building that, what I realized is, oh, that observer was always there and it always is. And that it's not a matter of building it up intellectually. And that can be useful. Oh, that can be very useful. But then there's the part we've got to go, well, wait a minute. I'm still identifying with the built up idea of an observer versus, well, who's looking at that idea? Oh, the actual observer who's been there all along. And that was that thirst I was feeling was the thirst to back up and reconnect to that and stay in it. Now I'm sure before that I connected to it often, but I couldn't stay in it. So I touched a moment ago on the metaphor of sitting in the theater watching the movie. I use that a lot with my clients, that we've all gone to a movie theater, sat there, watched the movie, and gotten so absorbed in it in our mind that we forgot we were in the theater and we were into whatever we were
Mm,
experiencing, whatever the movie was about. And when you back up, like the person in that situation, which I would say every human being is in that psychological situation from the moment of birth. There's a part of us that's just in the theater watching. And then we've been given the gift of this amazing movie. And some scenes are delightful and some scenes are horrible and painful and like, but
mm,
they keep painting and we can, without conversations like this, just going through the movie, I think eventually slowly wakes us up. But then when in the movie, you and I show up and have a conversation like this, it can lead to the title of my book is a reality shattering insight or big insights that aren't reality shattering, but awakening like, oh yeah, I can feel that part of me in the theater watching the movie. And you know what? It's just fine. I've been okay all along. I just forgot. No matter what's on the screen, it doesn't have to affect me at all unless I let it through my attention. In the kind of attention where I believe it, and then I enter the movie as if I'm not don't have a part of me in the theater. So ultimately, can I learn to live in touch with both and having the theater part be the foreground? And the background is the day-to-day experience of time, space, and matter. And most of us have to go into the time, space, and matter. I call that the horizontal dimension to eventually get to the point where we feel that thirst from the inner vertical dimension to kind of go back. And that can be little by little, or I had that experience when I was 28. And in my book, I talk about a man named Sidney Banks, who was a humble welder who in his middle age had an experience, and I won't go through the details here. It would take too much, even though it's fascinating. And one friend of his said one thing to him, and his whole consciousness
Mm.
completely changed, and that led to a whole breakthrough in the field of psychology. Then I've been a part of a pioneering group for over 4 decades. I'll tell you the one thing he was told.
Cool.
So he was racked with insecurity. He felt insecure. He had a wife and kids, and he was a welder, and he had a job, and people liked him. But in his mind, he was inadequate and unlovable. And he
Mm.
had his reasons. Well, I was unlovable because I was adopted. When I was a kid, my own parents gave me up, and he remembered it because he was old enough. He grew up in Scotland, but then his adoptive parents were in Canada. So he lived in Canada and grew up, and they were very poor. So he couldn't finish school. He had to go and earn money to help the family survive. So he felt stupid and inadequate, and that he couldn't speak well. And in front of other people, he thought he'd sound stupid. So he was just racked with this insecurity. And he's going out one day, he's walking on the ocean with a friend of his that he knew for over 10 years. And he was going on and on to him about how insecure he was. And his friend stopped him and said, Sid, this is just rubbish. I've known you for 10 years. You're not insecure. You just think you are.
Mm.
It's stunned. He said, I didn't just hear what that person said. I heard my first spiritual fact. He said, basically, I heard that everything I've ever experienced, I've made it up in my mind. And it was so captivating and so had the resonance of truth and the possibility of being freed from this misery that it ignited this 3 day, 3 night process that then he came out the other side and he was completely changed. And he began to share what he understood and experienced with others, and it rippled out and is now gone. He's no longer with us. He died a number of years ago. But his experience and what he taught has gone all over the world, especially through the field of psychology, like through people like me. So that we can come little by little or all at once. And I wrote that book, Reality Shattering Insights, to put that possibility out there for people, or maybe even remind them. Because if we reflect, we'll go, well, yeah, I've had moments where I got an insight and everything I saw after that changed. Like I thought that person was horrible. And then I really got to know them. And all of a sudden I thought, oh my gosh, they're great, or vice versa. So it's like, oh, what if we could have a single insight that would completely free us and give us a whole new go from essentially outside in to inside out experientially, not just theoretically, it's great, but it's not ultimately there.
Yeah.
And so I've been passionate ever since to kind of get it out there. And I've got psychological experience, I've got brain science experience behind this that I could add in if necessary. And then just my own experience to back it up too. So,
It sounds like we need to rush out and buy the book. So where can we get hold of it? What's it called and where do we get it?
it's called Reality Shattering Insights, Begin Life's Journey. And there's a line on the cover that says, explore the human ability to completely transform in an instant. And that does not say, oh, we don't have to go through our ongoing experiential learning and growing and awakening. That's there. That continues even after an awakening. But what the awakening does, it's like a threshold you go over, and it's like I have, it's in some models, it's called knowledge with a capital K.
Mm,
It's like I have no doubt, and I since that moment, who I am, why I'm here, what this means experientially.
mm,
Now, to put that into words keeps evolving, getting more refined, more impactful with the people that it needs to be. So, and it's on Amazon. Just put my name in or the Reality Shattering Insights in there. And in fact, thank you for this opportunity. I'm just going to take a moment here. It's the first of a 4-book series, and I have not completed the other books, but what those books do, the first one just puts out that possibility. I share a bit
mm,
about my experience, but not a lot. That's in the third book. And I tell about Sid, and then I give 14 different reality shattering insights, and there could be endless ones, but that
yeah.
the reader will be exposed to. And I say in the beginning of the book, I'm not just going to tell you that people can change in an instant. We've heard about spontaneous remission from cancer and drug addiction and all kinds of things. But I'm going to try to actually start facilitating that process in the book. And I've
Right.
gotten the feedback from a number of people that they've been just bowled over by it. And I don't think everybody will be, but it's happened. So that's the first book. The second book then goes way in depth about this breakthrough in the field of psychology. It's called The Three Principles. I share Sid Banks' story in detail so they can hear in his own words what he experienced. That's book two. Book three is an additional step. In book two, I talk about inverting consciousness. And in book three, I talk about fully inverting that when you go over that threshold and then so that's a whole nother set of ideas and context. And that's where I bring in the brain science because it involves it's the three principles are a psycho-spiritual paradigm. And what I talk about in the third book is a biopsychospiritual. It brings
Mm,
in the body so it's fully integral. And then the fourth book is this kind of where do we go from here? If you've gone down this path with me or in some other ways similarly, where do we go from here in terms of human beings living on this planet? And all of us, I'm sure, will. You can't not feel the heart of humanity in you and the love of life and the world itself, but especially human beings. So it's your joy then to go out and offer what you can to at least your even just your presence and your goodwill, but helpful actions, helpful. I don't even know your personal background, but I know I can tell you have a heart for people to even do this kind of a pod and
mm.
to reach out and connect and have us awaken to more of what life has for us.
Brilliant. Well, oh, look, the book, as you said, was called, remind us, Reality Shattering Insights. You can get it on Amazon. I found it in Amazon UK, so that's good as well. Craig Polsfuss, and the surname is Polsfuss. It'll be in the links from the website. Craig, it's been a joy to talk to you today. It's fantastic. And the person you're talking about is Sidney Banks, I think, isn't it? S-Y,
Yes,
Sydney
it
with a
is.
Y.
That's
And
right.
you're right, Scottish person talked about three principles of psychology and such like. So a very interesting, different school of thought around psychology, which I think is always interesting to try out. I could sit and chat all day, but unfortunately, I need to be respectful of your time. And I know you're in the early morning, so I wish you a good day. And as I say, it's been an absolute delight to talk to you today. It's fascinating.
Thank you.
You take care.